Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm looking excited that you're here. Thanks for joining me and spending a little time with me. I just got back from visiting my friend JTB, Jessica Todd Belanti. She freshened up my do. It's like the only time my hair gets blow dried, you guys, is when I go see JT. She's the best. All right, and we're back. Focus. Okay, I think I'm gonna call this episode the leaf blowing lessons. Leaf blowing lessons. All right, and here's the deal, you guys. You know that this show, the Karen Kenney Show, has several objectives, but probably the top two most important is about, number one, ending suffering for people and animals, ending suffering, but also to pour more love into the world. So whenever I'm doing an episode, I'm always thinking like, one, how can I be helpful? So it's always like, right, I want to educate, I want to elevate, I want to enlighten, I want to entertain, but like, how can I be helpful? How can I pour more love into the world? How can I help people to give them whatever might be useful and valuable to help them to have less suffering in their lives, and also, of course, to end suffering for both humans and animals. And so hopefully this episode, you might be like, leaf blowing lessons. Why do I want to listen to this? Because I'm going to make it applicable in some way. Just stick with me. Just trust me. Just hang in there. Hang in there. All right. I'm going to share some, I'm going to tell a little story like I always do. And then I'm going to bring it around to something applicable to your life or to your business or your relationships or whatever. I don't like to waste anybody's time. So hopefully you're going to find a little nugget somewhere in here, a little golden nugget that you can apply to your own life. Okay. So thank you for being here. Number one, I appreciate you, loyal listeners. New folks, so happy you're here. If you're like, who's this broad? Why am I here? Why did my auntie send me a link to this show? How did I get here? Right? If you want to know more about me, go to Karen Kenney, KENNEY.com and check out the shenanigans, see what I'm up to, see who I am, and just welcome to my world. And I'm so happy you're here. Okay, let's dive into this. Okay, number one. So I live on a dirt road, okay? And my street is not like part of, like, obviously we live in a town, right? But our street is kind of not looked after. Like, so you know how when you live in a town or a little city and the plow guys come out, right? Like in Concord, it's like the plow guys come out and you got to move your car off the road when it's snowing and put it over here because the city plow trucks are coming through. Okay, yeah. No, my street is not taken care of by the town. We take care of the street. So we've got our own plow guy who comes down, and me and all our neighbors and stuff like that, right? So once a year, so there's a couple of times a year when they take care of the dirt road, the pave, like the graders come out and the big machinery comes out and they flatten it out and they roll the things and they do all this stuff. But then once a year, all the neighbors on the street, we do like annual road cleanup day. And what that really means is we're going down the street and we're cutting back the brush and we're blowing the leaves, we're getting rid of the leaves, and we're doing all this stuff. Okay. So I'm a city kid. First of all, I didn't grow up having to rake jack shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, never lived anywhere long enough to buy like gardening tools, or never had enough land or property where it became a problem. Okay. Or an opportunity, however you want to look at it. So my sweetie and I have been living in our current house for this is the longest we've ever lived anywhere. We've been here long enough that we put down some roots, and we now have like some gardening, we have like shovels and rakes and ladders and like whatever. So we have like 3.5 acres of property. We live where there's a lot of trees, lots of woods and stuff. So all the neighbors have all the stuff to take care of their property, right? And so, but mostly, my sweetie helps too. All of a sudden we get a top, we got some rakes, and I was raking. I, of course, was not raking all 3.5 acres, but a good chunk of this sucker, I was just raking by hand. Dear God, help me. Okay. So on one of these recent, like last year, I think it was, one of our neighbors comes over on the road work day, and he's got like this jet pack, like commercial grade leaf blower. Not only him, but like two other guys down the street have the same model. And I'm like, what is it? You know, it's like you literally, if you're not watching this, you can't see me, but literally imagine putting on a backpack, and on your back, you're carrying like the motor. And then like having a huge electronic arm, you got this big nozzle, like a big elephant snout nozzle with like a like a little button that like you can push, that all of a sudden it's like, right? And you can blow the leaves. This thing is like hardcore. This thing like moves leaves like nobody's business. And I see my neighbor, and literally like a little kid, like I'm like, oh my God. And he sees me standing there like with my rake, watching him as he's blowing leaf out of the little, I don't know what you call it, the little gully stuff, like where the water runs down or whatever, right? So I'm just standing there, and you can see the look on my face. And he's like, do you want to try it? And I'm like, yes, please. So I'm like I put this thing on my back, and I tighten up the straps, and I get the button, and I'm like, I'm telling you, 30 seconds, I'm sold. I'm like, must have one of these, because I cannot believe how fast and efficient this thing is. Now, look, I want to say this. I'm a total tree hugger. I've been vegan for over 20 years. I love the environment. And I'm like, don't come for me. I'm like, I know some people are going to be like, well, if you really cared about the environment, you would keep raking. Listen, I have an electric lawnmower. Okay. So there's that. I have an electric lawnmower, but I'm telling you, with this thing, it saves me so much time. I can get the job done so much faster. So anyways, I immediately go out and buy one. Okay. Now we're getting into the heartbeat of the story. So once I get my hands on one of these like commercial grade, like leaf blowers, like the real deal. Okay. Number one, I want to say this. I don't blow my whole yard. I couldn't. I have so many trees and woods around me. And I let a lot of the leaves compost, and I leave a lot of the critters alone. I'm not somebody who uses chemicals in my yard or on my grass or whatever. I like dandelions. I don't mind weeds. I like when the milkweed's in my yard. That was a new one I learned about this year. I got milkweeds, and I learned that butterflies love them. Like, how cool is that? So I try not to disturb too much, but like my porch, my deck, the driveway, I want that shit cleared off. I hate it when it's covered, right, with all the leaves and the acorns and all the shit. Okay. So I like to leave little nesting places for the critters, though. So I just want to say that. Okay. So here's what I learned, though. I have this leaf blower. You guys are like, get to the point, KK. Okay. But I have this leaf blower. And the way that my mind works. Now, some of you might be able to appreciate this. Okay. So number one, I want to say this, and especially to the ladies, especially to those of us, right? Women in general, these are just very general statements, right? I don't like to put people in boxes. I don't like to label people, but we know in general, maybe it's because brain development wise, we've had to, but a lot of times women have been very good at being able to multitask. And I did a whole podcast about this. I think I called it single tasking because I don't actually, I think that multitasking, we believe it is a thing, but I don't think that we actually do many things at once well. I think it's better to kind of single task, which is going to kind of be a little bit, what are the nuggets of what I'm about to say? So what will happen is I'll start in one section, right? And I'll go, all right, I'm going to blow off, the deck, and I'm going to blow off like the lower deck and the stairs. Great. Then what happens is I go into the yard, like where the dogs hang out, right? And stuff when it's potty time and all that. And I've got two of these. I've got three actually, but I'll start to do one with a leaf blower. And it's like, zin, zin, right? Now, if you're not careful, right? If you're not intentional and you're not careful, leaves end up going all over the place. Like if you don't know what you're doing, like when you first start to use a leaf blower, you kind of make more of a mess than you do help yourself. Okay. So what will happen is you'll start working in one section, and then you'll see some leaves blow over there. And then you're like, oh, And then you start to go over to that section. And then you start to get distracted. So now the real area that you took out the friggin' leaf blower for in the first place, you now find yourself like 50 yards away from it doing something else. So what I realized is when I first started doing this, first of all, I was just excited to use it because it was really fun and it was new and it was exciting. And what I realized is if I'm not careful, I'm going to end up wasting more time, even though I have a more powerful and efficient machine, even though I have a powerful tool. If I don't wield the tool responsibly, if I don't use it in a particular way, it's not actually going to be that helpful to me. I'm just going to waste time. I'm going to waste gas, right? And it's not good in energy. It's not going to be worth it. So I realized that because I had so many sections and areas that I wanted to do this thing on, I'm out there with the leaf blower and I'm blowing a little bit there. And then I turn around and it's like squirrel. Now, note, right? I know a lot of people who talk about having ADD or ADHD. I know a lot of adults are getting diagnosed more than ever. And this is not a commentary on that. I do believe, however, that I think that these devices like our phones and shit, right? All the little electronic devices, I'm waggling my phone. I was waggling my phone if you're not watching. I think that they're teaching us how to be distracted. I think they're teaching us how to not have focus, to not be able to stay with one thing for long periods of time. I think we go searching for dopamine hits. That's another story altogether, but I just wanted to say that. So what I realized is I was watching myself. Okay. So one of the things that I always tell my spiritual mentoring clients, people I work with one-to-one hypnosis, all that stuff, right? My one-to-one clients, my group coaching clients, all of that stuff. I always say the same thing. Notice what you notice. That applies to me too. So while I'm outside goofing around, having fun with the leaf blower, I start to notice what I notice. And what I notice is this, that if I'm not careful, I'll end up doing 20% in one area, 20% in another area. Then I'll decide to, oh, I need to make a path for the leaves to go through, like where the leaves I'm going to be blowing. First, I got to blow that section. Before I know it, I'm down by the shed. And instead of being up in the dog yard where I initially started, now I'm halfway down the driveway because I'm just kind of following where I'm. So I'm letting the tool, right, and the leaves direct me rather than me direct myself. So I kind of get not so much distracted as it is, for lack of a word, unfocused. I'm trying to think about this. So what will happen sometimes, and we can apply this to anything, right? So I'm talking about blowing leaves, but we get blown around all the time by our thoughts. We get blown around by, like, if you've ever been like, oh, you're looking for the answer to something, right? And you're like, I'm just going to look this up on Google. And before you know it, you've gone down some sort of rabbit hole, and now you're doom scrolling on some social media site. And you're like, oh my God, how did I get here? Because you just took off and you started to follow, right? You weren't leading. You were no longer in charge, right? You started to kind of follow those blowing leaves and wherever they were going. And you were just being taken wherever the wind blowed you, it was blowing you, rather than setting your sail and directing a course and staying the course. So that's what I realized. I'm like, I'm just out here and I'm getting blown all over the place. And what I realized was I need to create a little discipline here. I need to create focused energy, focused effort, right? Focused energy and sustained effort. And I needed to say, okay, we're just going to do what Anne Lamott told. Anne Lamott, the writer, if you don't know Annie Lamott, check out her work. All right. She's written so many incredible books. And probably her most famous book is called Bird by Bird. And it's like Bird by Bird, some instructions on writing in life. It's such a fantastic book. And when I have clients who are starting to get overwhelmed by a transformation process or a change process or personal development or whatever, creating a DSP, a daily spiritual practice. And I'll talk about that in a second. I always say to them, we're just going to take it bird by bird, buddy, and I'll break it down for them. This is how we're going to do it. We're not going to try to do all the things at once because you will become overwhelmed and your nervous system will start to go into fight and flight and you're going to get triggered and you're going to get scared. And some people will just shut down. They'll just be like, it's too much all at once. It can be very reminiscent, right? When we think about what trauma is, again, we don't have, I'm just going to say very quickly, sip, as Linda Ty would say, right? Trauma isn't just events that happen to you. It's what happened inside of you as a response to what happened. And a lot of times trauma can feel like too much, too fast, too soon, right? Or too often and for too long. Whatever was going on, right? Too much, too soon, too often, like in the nervous system is just like, I can't. So I often say, okay, guys, we're just going to take it bird by bird. So I had to notice that I was getting blown about by the leaves. The leaves were working me. I was not working the leaves. And I was like, okay, you need to bird by bird your own ass. You need to just do this. So what I did is I looked around and I said, okay, I'm going to break this down into sections. So rather than trying to do everything all at once and getting overwhelmed, I was like, okay, you're going to do the top deck. And I blew everything off the top deck. Right. I removed the cushions. I removed the things to wipe your feet. I did all the things. And then I cleaned off that. And then I put everything back. Great. Now you're going to do the lower decks. Boom. I did that. I blew all the leaves down into the driveway. Awesome. Now you're going to do this section of the dog yard. Great. I did that because I found myself just ping, 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 ricochet rabbit. I was just bouncing around going wherever the leaves blew me. Right. And I was like, nope, we need focused energy and sustained effort. And we're just going to take it one thing at a time, bird by bird. And the whole story of bird by bird, I could probably do a whole podcast on this, but the wicked short story is Annie, when she was younger, Anne Lamott, when she was growing up, her brother had a book report that was due, or it was some sort of a project, right? Where he had to, I don't know, he had to do little bits and pieces on all the state birds or whatever the thing was. It was a project on birds. Okay. And of course he had put it off until the last minute, to the last night and he starts to panic. Those Sunday scaries when you're like, shit, I have to go back to school and I got to turn in my homework and oh my God, I didn't do the project. I didn't do my work. Right. So her brother is like freaking out. And he's sitting at the table and he's trying to get it done. And I guess he just starts to cry and he gets overwhelmed. And his dad comes over to him and he's like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the dad is like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I have to do all these birds and da, da, da. And the dad just kind of put his hand on his kid's shoulder and he said, okay, buddy, we're just going to take it bird by bird. Okay. Same thing with writing. Just take it word by word. You know what I mean? And when you're out there in your life and you're leaf blowing, just take it section by section, leaf by leaf. But in life, what I often find, especially working with people, when we try to do all the things at once, and I think this is kind of like perfect timing because I know as the new year is approaching, right? We're getting closer and closer to the end of 2023. And it can be really wicked tempting to start to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of be really unkind to yourself with like 2024 new year. I'm going to have all new year, new you, I'm going to do all these new, I'm going to break all these bad habits. I'm going to put all these things in place. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. It's going to sound good in your brain. It's going to sound good on paper. And if you try to start to do too many new things at once, you're going to get overwhelmed. I shouldn't say you will. The likelihood is that you might. Some people might not, but the likelihood is that you'll get overwhelmed. You'll get overwhelmed. It will feel like too much at once. And then maybe you'll slip up because you can't live up to your own expectations, right? And then you won't do it perfectly. And then you'll get discouraged and then you'll quit. And that's what happens a lot. Okay. I used to work at a Planet Fitness when I first moved back east from California. That's a story for another day. But I saw how fucking packed the gym was in January and how slowly over the course of a few weeks, a couple of months, things went right back to normal because everybody tries to go gung-ho, like, I'm going to blow all the leaves all the time in the whole yard everywhere. I'm like, no, and more no. Let's just bird by bird this sucker. Let's just take it one thing at a time. So when you're trying to either create a new habit or break an old habit, when you're trying to do something in personal development, when you're trying to work on spiritual growth, when you're trying to work on some healing. I just want to say this. Just take it one thing at a time. Don't fire hose yourself with, I'm going to just like, you know what I said? Like, again, you get that leaf blower out there and you start going and you're all over the place and shit's going everywhere. And you're actually not making forward progress. You're not actually moving in a forward direction. You're actually going left and right and left and right and left and right. You're taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 1 step forward, and you feel like I'm doing something. So some part of you feels like, oh yeah, I'm doing something, but you're actually not making sustained progress because you're really just blowing a bunch of shit around and calling it progress. So one thing at a time. That's what I want to say. So notice if you're the kind of person who all of a sudden like goes gung-ho and is like, I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to get all this stuff. And then you actually only like stick with it for a short amount of time because it becomes too much and too overwhelming. And I just want to share this too while I'm talking about it. Again, especially with the new year coming up, there's going to be a lot of temptation to change. Like maybe I'm making these up, but whatever. I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to start doing 10,000 steps. I'm going to start drinking water every day. I'm going to start meditating every day. I'm going to start doing a gratitude journal. I'm going to start eating, vegan, plant-based, I'm like, okay. My poor nerve. I'm like rubbing my own face. I'm havening technique. I'm like havening my own face as I say this because I'm like, oh my God. I can even feel my heart start to go like, oh my God, that's a lot. Let's just calm. As I say to my friends joking around sometimes, fucking relax. Just calm down over there, as I say. Okay, listen to this. Because a lot of people also beat themselves up with bad information, right? A lot of stuff gets put into the culture and nobody really questions it. And people just parrot it and regurgitate it without actually doing their homework. So there's a lot out there that says it takes 21 days to create a new habit. Maybe not. Okay, for a lot of people. So listen to this. According to a 2009 study that was published in the European Journal of Social Psychology, listen to this. It actually takes 18 to 254 days for a person to form a new habit. Okay? That's a lot different than the good old-fashioned 21 days that we've all been fed. Because what happens is, this is another thing that happens in the culture. I've seen this happen with quotes. I've seen this like with misquotes, especially. People assign certain quotes to certain people and it wasn't even them and they don't bother to check. They just want to look spiritual and they just want to look a particular way. So they just share it and it just keeps getting shared. And I'm like, did anybody stop to question or do their homework and see if this person actually really said that thing? So this is one of those things that just kept getting reshared without anybody stopping. So listen, it takes between 18, the study said, 18 to 254 days for a person to form a new habit. But here's another interesting thing that the study concluded, that on average, it takes 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. So I always just say to people to keep it like easy, give yourself at least 100 days. I'm talking like 3 months with a little extra boop, right? 3 months with a little extra boop when you're trying to undo an old habit and replace it with a new habit. Okay. So if we insist that it's going to be 21 days, most people, like once in a while, I know myself, I have gone cold turkey and I decided, right? Like, I'm done. I'm done with this thing. I'm done with this habit. I'm done with this behavior. I'm done with this person. I'm done with this relationship. And when I'm done, I'm done. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to work at it. It's like done. But it's usually because I've put up with something for so long that I was ready to be done with it, right? Sometimes what you're putting up with is your own bullshit. Sometimes you're putting up with somebody else's. Okay, but here's the thing. So listen, It takes 66 days for a new behavior to become automated, to become automatic, to make it habitual, at least 66 days. So you can run with 66, but we also know there's a range. And look, at change can happen, boom, instantaneously, like on the spot, like I have proven to myself, right? But 18 to 250, what is it? 18 to 254? Yeah. But I always say, give yourself like 100 days. Now, if you're giving yourself 100 days to create one new habit, what does that tell us? How many days are there in the year? And let's say you want to say like, okay, I'm like, maybe you can cultivate 3 to 4 new good habits like in a year. Because if we're given each habit like 3 months, that's pretty great. Do you know how different you'll be when you have, right, sustained focus and effort, sustained energy and focus effort to do one thing rather than walking around blowing your leaves everywhere, trying to do all the things for everybody all the time? It's like nothing gets done. What you ends up is, again, you waste time, you waste resources, you waste energy, because you're not just sticking with one thing. You're trying to multitask, or you're trying to do all the things at once rather than just saying, hey, stop. Focus right here for a while. Let's nail down this piece, this skill, this habit, this training, this material. Let's embody this. Let's really learn this. Let's practice this before we move on. And then we try to get this certification or that skill set or that thing or that habit or that new thing. You know what I mean? So I was just thinking about it because I just leaf blowed yesterday. And I'm way better at it, right? I'm way better at it now than I was, say, like the very first time, because now I know it's like, okay, you got to stick with this thing, right? And it's really fun. Like, hey, look, if you've got hours and you just want to walk around doing a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe that's maybe that's how you do things. I'm not here to shame, blame, judge, or anything like that. But what I know is, when I tend to stick with something and I put my focus energy in one spot and then complete that task, and then it's like next, and you actually get a lot more done. And it's so fulfilling to do a job well done, and to be able, for the box checkers that I know, right, to be able to say, okay, as Andrew Huberman tells us, right, 90 minutes of sustained focus effort is what the brain is really good at. And then you get up and you give yourself a little break, right? Maybe you take a little sip of some water, little dance party, whether you're learning something, whether you're doing something. 90 minutes, take a break, get that little dopamine hit, get rewarded for the effort, not for the outcome, and then continue on. So you guys, I hope this was helpful for you in some way. I hope maybe you recognize some part of yourself and you're like, ooh, that's me. Like, oh yeah, I do that. Or, hey, here's a new way of looking at that, right? So again, bird by bird yourself. I'm telling you, this is a commercial grade leaf blower. So it wasn't just like I was blowing like a couple of leaves over there. It's like, and like, the leaves would go everywhere. And I was like, oh, because I didn't know how to direct, the nozzle, like the big elephant snout. And what's really fun, what are those things called? Not the starter, the clutch. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and on one thing, like, it's so funny because when you first turn it on, you have to let it idle. And it's got these little drawings, and one is a turtle. There's like neutral in the middle, and then one's a turtle. And then the top one is like a rabbit. And that's the other thing too. We don't like to let things warm up. We don't like to let it idle in the turtle. We don't like to take it slow. We just like to dime that thing. We just like to kind of like punch it to the floor and go right into the rabbit. But the machine will die off if you don't let it warm up. If you don't like start to like just kind of build up to a thing. If you just go like balls to the wall, if you insist on doing that with everything, you just end up making a mess. So slowly but surely, I have learned, right, over the last year, how to really use this machine efficiently. Right. And now I can really, like, my sweetie even texted me today, and he complimented me. He said, hey, I just want to tell you, you did a fantastic job blowing the leaves yesterday. The yard and the driveway looked fantastic. And I was like, yeah, like I was so proud of myself. It was so nice of him to say that. and for him to send me the text message. But he was very specific. You know, he said the areas that I did, this is how he described it to me. Like I did a really fantastic job. It made me so happy. But just like I've learned, right, where to direct that snout, that nozzle, that hose, whatever you want to call it, the leaf blower with the thing, right? Just like I've learned to use that in my favor, I've learned how to do the same thing with my mind over sustained time of meditation, contemplation, mindfulness, prayer practice, right? 30 plus years of having a daily DSP, a daily spiritual practice has helped me to place my mind more and more where I want it to be able to focus like a motherfucker when I need to. And that's a superpower. If you can place your mind where you want it to be. I'm not saying I always do it right. I'm not saying I always do it good. But a lot of the time, more often than not, I can put my attention where it needs to go. And my sweetie can tell, like when I'm focused, I don't even know you're in the room with me. Like when I'm focused sometimes, like if my mind is engaged on the thing in front of me, it's like, oh, like, you know, it's like, oh, you know what I mean? So there's something very powerful about, again, sustained effort, right? And sustained focus, right? What did I say? My own words, right? Focused effort, focused energy, sustained effort can be so powerful. So I hope this was helpful in some way. I so appreciate you tuning in. There's going to be a couple of new changes to the Karen Kenney Show coming in 2024, which I'm wicked excited about. Like nothing crazy, but just to make it more and more me. Right. So like, because I'm growing and evolving, I'm going to be coming up on 5 years, you guys, Jesus Christ, like 5 years of podcasting, which is so exciting. So it's time for just a little zhuzh, just a little zhuzhy zhuzh, a little whooshy, a little massage, right? A little whooshy to the Karen Kenney Show. So thank you to all of you who have been listening and going on this journey all along. You guys, if you don't want to miss out on all the shenanigans, what I'm up to, what's happening, what I'm offering, new ways to work with me, retreats, all that stuff, just go to KarenKenney.com/sign up. Get on my email list, join the family. You'll get this podcast sent to you every Thursday morning, straight into your inbox. You don't have to go looking for it. Hopefully you've subscribed and you automatically get the download. But if not, this is another cool way to receive it. And just go ahead and do that. And then that will put you on my email list. I don't spam. I don't share your information. I don't do anything weird. I just write to you on Tuesdays and I either tell a little story or I give you something helpful or I offer you a way to kind of like an invitation, right? To work with me in some way or whatever, right? Little love notes into your inbox. And on Thursdays, I shoot you the podcast. So you guys, thank you so much. And as you know, as I said, right, this podcast is all about helping to find ways to end our suffering and to pour more love into the world. So as I always say, wherever you go, may you leave yourself, may you leave the environment and the animals and the people and the planet and the places you go better than how you first found them. Wherever you go, may you and your presence and your energy and your love be a blessing. Bye.
Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days. And let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie. and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, Keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.